Ladies and gentlemen, there exists a silent rhythm in the universe, one not heard with the ears, but felt in the quiet chambers of the soul. A rhythm that does not rush, does not explain and never arrives too early. In this mysterious cadence, the universe does not hand over love to rare souls without a trial. It waits, it watches, it tests. Not everyone is tasked with these deeper trials. But those who carry ancient hearts, those who feel too much, think too deeply, and love too honestly, are given a different path. One carved not in straight lines but in spirals. Before the universe gives them the person who truly sees them, it first wants to know before the right person enters a rare soul's life. There is a profound and necessary descent into solitude. This is not the solitude people often romanticize, the kind that is easily interrupted by distraction or cured by company. This solitude is sacred, weighty, and often unbearably silent. It is the kind that strips away illusion, noise and dependency. The universe does not send the right person to fill a void. It waits until the rare soul no longer fears the void at all. This kind of aloneness is not about being without others. It is about being wholly with oneself, in a way that reveals what is authentic and what is borrowed, what is truth and what is coping. The soul must come face to face with the stillness it used to run from, and in that stillness, find not panic, but presence. There is a common illusion that love will save us from ourselves. That someone will come and finally make the noise stop, make the pain disappear, make the questions vanish. But rare souls are not allowed to live in that illusion for long. They are pulled out of it, often violently, often through loss or betrayal or a sudden emptiness that refuses to be ignored. These souls are stripped of the distractions that used to soothe them, and in that stripping, the truth of who they are is laid bare. No partner, no companion can complete a person who has not yet found their own center. And the universe knows this. It waits. It watches to see what you do with the silence that no one else can touch. It is in this space that the rare soul begins to transform. They begin to learn the difference between isolation and solitude, between craving attention and cultivating inner peace. They begin to see their patterns clearly, the way they used to chase validation, the way they used to contort themselves for acceptance, the way they used to fear abandonment so deeply that they abandoned themselves first. Solitude brings these patterns to the surface, not to shame, but to heal. It reveals the ways in which we've been fragmented, and asks us to come home to ourselves. Most people are terrified of being alone, because they believe it means being unloved. But the rare soul eventually understands that solitude is the birthplace of self-love, the training ground for inner wholeness. Without it, relationships become mirrors of need rather than reflections of truth. When you have not learned to hold yourself, you will ask others to carry the weight of your unhealed wounds. You will call it love, but it will be dependence. You will call it passion, but it will be projection. You will call it fate, but it will be fear in disguise. The rare soul is not allowed to skip this lesson. They must learn to enjoy their own company. Not as a placeholder, not as a waiting room for someone else's arrival, but as a full expression of their being. They must sit at the table of their own presence and feast on the richness that lives within. This is not easy. There will be days of aching loneliness, of wanting to reach out to someone, anyone, just to escape the echo of their own thoughts. But the universe holds them there with compassion and firmness, knowing that every moment spent in true solitude is softening something rigid, awakening something dormant, healing something wounded in time. The rare soul stops asking when the right person will come. They begin instead to ask, who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when I stop performing for love? Who am I when I become enough for myself? And it is in the answering of these questions, not in their avoidance, that the rare soul becomes ready. Not perfect, not finished, but steady enough to love without clinging, open enough to receive without grasping, and whole enough to stand beside another without losing themselves in the process. Before the universe entrusts a rare soul with the right person, it sends them inward, deeper than comfort, into the dense, tangled forest of their own shadow. It is not an act of cruelty but of reverence. For the universe does not deliver sacred union to those who have not yet to meet the parts of themselves they have exiled. The shadow is everything the ego denies, everything the personality edits out, everything the world told you to suppress in order to be loved. It is rage, envy, shame, fear, lust, grief, inadequacy. It is the version of the self that doesn't smile on command, doesn't please to belong, doesn't hide to survive. And the rare soul is summoned to meet it not conceptually, but intimately, until there is no longer a war between who appear to be and who they truly are. This confrontation is rarely dramatic in outward appearance. It happens in the quiet. In the moments when no one is there to distract you. In the nights when the pain has no clear cause but still demands to be felt. In the interactions that trigger a disproportionate response, revealing the child within who still believes love must be earned, or that safety depends on silence. The rare soul is given these experiences not as punishment, but as medicine. They are asked to hold space for the emotions they were never taught to name. To sit with the discomfort they once numbed. To acknowledge the parts of themselves they were told to be ashamed of. And the longer they sit, the more they see that what they feared in the shadow was never evil. Only unhealed. Most people bury their darkness, covering it with charm, with humor, with productivity, with a well-curated identity. But rare souls are stripped of these masks. They are asked to stop performing, to stop seeking approval, to stop outsourcing their worth. The universe waits to see, will you meet your shadow with judgment or with tenderness? Will you integrate or will you project? Will you confront the wounds or keep repeating them through relationships that mimic the very pain you've refused to address? Until the shadow is faced, love will always feel unsafe. Because you will keep looking for someone to save you from the parts of yourself you haven't accepted. The shadow does not disappear once acknowledged. It becomes a companion, a teacher, a necessary mirror. The rare soul learns to love deeply is not to avoid conflict or hide imperfection. It is to stand fully seen, with all your contradictions exposed, and still say, "Here I am." Until that moment arrives, love remains conditional. You will crave closeness but push it away. You will long for honesty but fear being known. You will ask for depth but settle for distraction. The universe watches this dance and waits for the rare soul to realize that wholeness is not the absence of shadow, but the embracing of it. To meet the right person before you've met your shadow is to hand them a script they never agreed to act out. You will make them responsible for the emotions you suppressed. You will interpret their love through the lens of old wounds. You will confuse triggers for truth. But once you've walked through the valley of your own psyche, once you've held your sadness without needing it to go away, once you've forgiven yourself for the things you to survive, then something changes. You no longer search for someone to complete the story, you become willing to co-write a new one, and this is what the universe waits for, not perfection, not purity, but integration. A soul who no longer sees their darkness as something to be hidden, but as something to be honored. Because only when you've held your own shadow with grace can you hold another's without flinching. Only when you've learned to sit in your own fire without running can you sit in theirs without trying to fix it. And only when love is no longer a remedy for your brokenness can it become the reflection of your wholeness that it was always meant to be. Before the right person can enter the life of a rare soul, the universe begins to refine their ability to see, not just through the eyes but through the deeper lens of discernment. This is not mere preference or taste, not the surface level choosing of a type or a role, but the soul's ability to perceive the difference between resonance and familiarity, between genuine connection and karmic repetition. The rare soul, by nature, is often drawn to depth, to potential, to intensity that masks itself as love. But the universe is not interested in whether someone excites your wounds. It wants to know if you've learned to tell the difference between being seen and being triggered, between chemistry that heals and chemistry that harms. This discernment is not taught in books or in light-hearted conversations. It is taught through heartbreak, through disillusionment, through the painful recognition that not everything that feels significant is meant to stay. The rare soul must be shown, again and again, that emotional intensity does not equal emotional safety, that someone saying the right words does not mean they are carrying the right soul, that attraction is not always aligned. The universe will allow connections that almost fit, people who mirror parts of the soul but cannot hold the whole, opportunities that seem divine but carry the same lessons in different disguises. It waits and watches to see if the rare soul will wake up from the spell of potential, to see if they can tell when love is just a projection of longing rather than a meeting of truth. This is one of the most difficult thresholds to cross, because the rare soul often feels deeply and loves unconditionally, even when that love is misplaced. They see the beauty under the chaos, the light behind the damage, the possibility of growth where others might walk away. But the universe does not test love in its ability to endure suffering. It tests love in its ability to choose wisely. And so the rare soul must learn that discernment is not judgment. It is the honoring of intuition, the protection of energy, the refusal to participate in cycles that drain rather than nourish. To walk away from what is almost aligned is a sacred act, one that requires strength of spirit and clarity of heart, one that says, "I will not settle for a connection that costs me my peace." The universe observes whether you will stay simply because something feels familiar, whether you will confuse history with destiny, whether you will interpret challenge as fate. It does not reward those who stay asleep in old patterns. It wants to know. Have you learned the language of your own nervous system? Can you tell when your body tenses at the sound of someone's voice? When your spirit contracts instead of expands in their presence? Do you listen to the way your breath shortens around certain people? Or the way your silence deepens around others, not from comfort but from suppression? This is the kind of intelligence the rare soul must cultivate. An inner knowing that no longer sacrifices itself for the sake of love. To discern is to honor your evolution. It is to understand that not every soulmate is a life partner. That some come only to reflect back what still needs healing. It is to recognize the difference between someone who activates your wounds and someone who nurtures your becoming. Between someone who keeps you craving and someone who teaches you to rest. The universe keeps offering moments of clarity disguised as heartbreak, until the rare soul learns that walking away can sometimes be the greatest act of self-respect. Not because the other was unworthy, but because you have finally remembered your worth. When discernment becomes second nature. When you can hear your intuition louder than your attachments. When you start asking whether they love you and start asking whether they meet you. The universe shifts. It no longer needs to test your boundaries through pain, because now you live them through wisdom. And only then does it begin to send what is truly aligned. Not to complete you, but to match the truth you've earned through act of choosing yourself again, and again without apology or delay or doubt. One of the most sacred and subtle tests the universe places before a rare soul is the test of self-betrayal. Not in loud obvious ways but in quiet moments where the cost of abandoning the self is masked as love. Where the rare soul is invited to silence their truth for the comfort of another. To dim their light so someone else can shine undisturbed. To bend their needs, their values, their voice, just slightly, just once, and then again, and again, until they no longer recognize the shape of their own essence. This test does not arrive as a clear choice between right and wrong. It appears as a longing to be accepted, to be chosen, to be held. And so the rare soul, who is often born with a heart wired for connection, a nervous system trained to anticipate others' needs before their own, finds themselves at a dangerous crossroads where love seems to demand their silence. The universe watches carefully in these moments, because this is where many lose themselves while trying to be loved. They mistake approval for affection, tolerance for devotion, and peacekeeping for peace. They learn to shrink slowly, sacrificing small truths in the name of harmony, not realizing that every time they say yes when their soul whispers no, a thread is pulled from the fabric of their wholeness. And the unraveling is so gradual, so socially accepted, that they may not even know it's happening until wake up one day exhausted, empty, living a life that does not belong to them. The test lies in whether they will wake up before the damage is permanent, whether they will hear the call back to self before the voice is too faint to follow. To betray the self is often easier than being misunderstood, rejected, or alone. The rare soul, especially one that has tasted abandonment before, may cleave to anything that feels like connection. Even if that connection costs them their truth, they may rationalize, compromise, and justify the emotional contortions they perform in relationships, saying things like, "No one is perfect," or, "It's not that bad," while inside a quiet grief begins to bloom. The universe does not judge this. It understands the ache that drives such choices, but it does not send the right person until the rare soul learns that love earned through self-erasure is not love. It is survival masquerading as intimacy. So the test deepens. People are sent who ask them to choose between authenticity and attachment. Between speaking their needs or keeping the peace. Between showing up fully or being just palatable enough to stay wanted. The rare soul is given relationships where their intuition says no but their fear says yes, where their gut clenches but their heart clings. They are not punished for choosing the familiar path. They are simply kept waiting, kept circling, kept repeating, until one day the pain of self-abandonment outweighs the fear of solitude. That is when the test begins to shift, not with a dramatic decision, but with a quiet refusal to compromise their soul to belonging ever again. The universe leans in when this shift occurs. It watches the rare soul begin to reclaim the small pieces of themselves they once gave away for love. It sees them take longer to respond, speak more slowly, leave when their spirit contracts instead of forcing it to stay. It witnesses them stop reaching for those who cannot meet them. Not out of bitterness, but from a place of deep self-respect. This is the moment when the rare soul starts to embody the truth that love is not about being chosen by others. It is about not choosing against yourself. The universe does not reward the martyr who sacrificed their truth for connection. It rewards the one who found connection within the truth of who they are. Who loved themselves enough to lose what was enough. Right person is not sent to rescue you from your aloneness or to validate your worth. They arrive when you no longer offer your soul as payment for temporary comfort. When you no longer see compromise as a synonym for sacrifice. When you can stand fully in your essence without apology and say, "This is who I am," not in defiance, but in remembrance, not with fear, but with reverence, not asking, "Will you stay if I change?" but knowing, "I will stay with myself no matter who walks away." Among the final and most quiet trials the universe offers to rare souls is the test of timing. The test that does not knock loudly but waits in the stillness. In the liminal spaces between what was and what is becoming, in the ache of almosts and the silence after goodbyes that came too early or too suddenly. It is not a test of endurance in the traditional sense. It is a test of presence, of how well the rare soul can remain rooted in the unknown without grasping, without reaching for illusion, without convincing themselves that they are ready when readiness has not yet ripened. The universe does not delay out of cruelty, it delays out of precision. It watches not your longing, but your alignment, not your urgency, but your embodiment. For rare souls, who often carry deep wells of feeling and a hunger for real connection, the waiting can feel like punishment. They see others finding love easily, moving from one relationship to another, and wonder if perhaps they are cursed with too much depth, too much truth, too much heart. But what they carry is not a curse, it is a frequency that cannot bond with what is shallow, hurried, or half awake. And so the universe withholds not because you are undeserving, but because what is meant for you cannot arrive while you are still asking love to rescue you from your becoming. The right person is not sent to fill the space of your emptiness, but to meet you in your fullness. That fullness cannot be faked, and the universe does not mistake performance for readiness in the waiting. You are being sculpted. Every unanswered question, every lonely morning, every night where your chest aches for someone to understand you. These are not pauses in your story. They are the pages where your soul learns to stop abandoning itself. The rare soul is asked to trust what they cannot see, to release timelines they inherited from others, to stop asking when and start asking who they are becoming in the meantime. Because the right person is never just a reward. They are a reflection of a state of being you have cultivated when no one else is watching. The universe wants to know, can you be patient with your process, or will you rush into another distraction and call it fate? Can you sit inside the ache without numbing it, without calling back someone you've outgrown, without shrinking yourself to fit into a story you've already outlived? This kind of patience is not passive. It is active surrender. It is the work of choosing your own evolution over fleeting companionship. It is saying no to what is almost aligned so you can say yes to what is. It is learning to see the difference between solitude and stagnation, between waiting and resisting. The universe watches whether you can hold yourself during the seasons of not knowing, whether you can remain tender while uncertain, whether you can continue expanding even when there's no one there to witness it. Because once you begin to live not from lack, but from overflow, not from urgency, but from rootedness, something shifts in the frequency you emit. You no longer attract from hunger. You attract from truth. And it is only then that the right person is allowed to enter. Not because you need them to save you. Not because you crave them to fill a void. But because you are finally a match to the love you were born to receive. A love that meets you where you are. Not where you were pretending to be. A love that doesn't ask you to shrink, wait or explain. A love that does not arrive early or late, but on time. Aligned with the moment you realize that you no longer chase what's missing. You embody what's whole. And in that embodiment, there is no fear of timing. Because you are no longer counting the days until someone comes. You are counting the ways you are already becoming the person who no longer doubts that love, when true, does not rush, does not prove, does not perform, it simply arrives and stays. To those who are still waiting, do not curse the pause. It is not empty, it is sacred. The universe is not late, is deliberate. If you have been tested deeply, loved fiercely, lost greatly and still hold space for beauty, you are not being forgotten. You are being refined. The love you seek is not behind you. It is not beside you yet. It is ahead, and is being matched to the depth of your becoming. Because the right person is not a reward for suffering. They are a mirror of the soul you chose to become when no one was watching. And when they arrive, you will not need to chase, question or doubt. You will simply recognize them, by the way your soul finally rests.